Hi everyone, welcome to another Hatton's Model Railway Skillscast session, where I give you some of the knowledge needed to transform your model railway into a fully functioning layout. Today, we're looking at some inspiration behind engine sheds, especially for you steam era modelers, giving you some indication of what the different buildings are for, what purpose they serve, and whether you need a small or large engine shed on your layout. So if you do have any particular questions, please do ask them in the chat, and I'll be answering them throughout the stream. Otherwise, I'll be giving you a guide through some of the products we have available right now for you to build a brand new engine shed on your layout or enhance an engine shed that you already have. So I've set up a little scene in front of me here with a very small engine shed, just suitable for our Hatton's P-Class, with everything we need to make sure this locomotive is cared for, maintained, and ready to go out on its next duties too. This isn't an exhaustive list of every single thing you'll find on a depot, but I will cover some of the basics and the things that you really need and some of the further options too. So most importantly, to start off with, we actually need an engine shed itself. This is used to cover up the engines to prevent the effects of weather on the locos. So if it rains quite a lot, you don't want your locos getting rusty by standing out in the rain all the time. And it's easier to light them up in the mornings inside a shed too. Hence, you have the ventilators on the top of a lot of sheds, so the steam can come out through the top of the shed and be fully ventilated rather than swirl around inside the shed. These come in a lot of different sizes for a lot of different locations. Many of you have seen the vast sprawling locomotive sheds that are out there, catering for hundreds and hundreds of locomotives at a time. And there's still some of these available out there today for you to see, such as the sheds at Didcot and the roundhouse at Barrow Hill. So this really is what's known more as a motive power depot. So a full-on depot with the full facilities you need, not only to maintain and service the locomotives and get them ready for operation, but also to carry out some light repairs on the fleet too. But sometimes on a very small branch line or somewhere that only had one or two locomotives, you would find a scene like this where it was purely just making sure the locomotive was ready for the day's service. To give you an example, let's see here. This is Loch Tay Shed in the Highlands of Scotland, and it's at the end of a very small branch line to a place called Killing. And the shed purely is a shed, a hut for staff, and a water crane that we see on the left there. So really minimal facilities here, just to make sure the locomotive is ready for the next services the next day. And that's what I've tried to replicate here in front of me. It's purely the basics you need to get a locomotive running. So we have the engine shed that we've discussed. Then we have the water tower with steam locomotives needing water and able to operate. You would find that even at the smallest sheds, there would be a water tank or a water tower, as you see here. So this would then keep a fresh supply of water ready to supply the locomotives. The bigger the shed, the bigger the water tower, as more locomotives will be needing to fuel up with water from those facilities. You'll also find those at a lot of the larger stations out there, and some of the smaller stations would have something similar to the water tower that we see here, with the smaller but still quite substantial water tank that you have. To get the water into the locomotives, we have a water crane. This pivots and swivels. So the water comes up and then it turns and the water is deposited into the locomotive tanks. So I've put that on my little diorama there to make sure our P-Class can be filled up with water when it is ready to come out of the shed and go into service. So we've got the basics here now ready for a small depot, but going back to the sheds for 1 second, more substantial buildings are available. I've got this Scenecraft double O gauge model here, which is ready-made. It is made from resin, as is the water tower, but you can get a few different variations depending on your skill level and budget. If you wanted to start looking at the card kits, they are produced by Metcalfe and a few other suppliers. You can get several different styles of the locos, as you can see. Sorry, of the sheds, with the stone-built shed here in front of me and the double-track version of the brick-built shed, which was just on the screen. But there's a huge different amount of those available. If you want something really easy to put together and you're on a budget, have a look at the Hornby plastic range. These snap together with stickers going over the windows and the sides So you can build these up on a real budget. And you can check out those now and everything I've got here today by clicking the link in the description. This is an example of one of those plastic kits without the stickers applied. This is exactly as it comes out of the box, which I have here. And then you apply the stickers, whether you want a brick or stone built finish, and then that is ready to place onto your layout as per so. So really good way to get into it on a little bit of a budget. I'll just show that picture again of the shed here. And Harry, that is Lochtay Shed. It's in the Highlands of Scotland. It's on the Killing branch on the former Caledonian Railway. And that just shows again that you don't need a huge amount of space to be able to include a shed on your layout. I've made a very small diorama here of a very similar style shed, and that's within just under 2 feet by a foot. So you've got a real opportunity there to fit that in if you are modeling a small branch line or something similar. So we've covered the shed to keep our locos as well maintained as possible and safely covered up when they're not in use. We've covered our water tower to make sure we get the water into the locomotives. We also need coal to make our locos work too. And these would, at smaller sheds, these would be provided in coal staves, as we see right in front of me here. So a very small pile of coal, sometimes on a platform at cab height, sometimes just straight on the ground, as we see here. And then the coal will be physically manhandled into the locomotive's bunkers, and again, the locomotive fueled and ready for service. Where we have some of the larger depots, you would have actually got full coaling towers, which were semi-automatic systems which sprawled up over the track, quite high buildings, mainly 3 or 4 stories in height, if not more in some places. And these would then be full of coal, similar in the way of the water tower worked. The locomotive would pull underneath that, and then the coal would be dropped right into the tender or the bunker of the steam locomotive. So for those of you with your busier or sprawling depots, you would have found that out there to fuel your locos a lot more efficiently. But again, on a small branch line like this, coal staves, as you see here, would have been more common, and the actual act of fueling up the locomotive would have been done by hand. So we have everything we need there to keep a basic depot in operation. This is really for the smaller end of the scene. So we have the pure essentials. We have the water tower and water crane. We have the coal, and we have the shed. So we can keep our locomotive safe and dry. We can keep it fueled with coal and water and ready to go. So that again is very similar to our shed, little shed that we saw in the Highlands of Scotland up in the 1960s. If we're looking at a larger shed, as we see here, this is where the facilities start to get a little more interesting, because as we mentioned towards the start of the stream, this isn't only the servicing of a small fleet of locomotives, this also includes the maintenance of a far larger fleet for many different duties. And we'll already see that this is a fully covered shed covering several different roads. There's at least 3 roads in the picture. And it's an interesting term, roads, because you think of that more as roads with cars on them. But it is a commonly used word when you're referring to sheds. So if you hear roads, it's actually the number of the lines that go into the shed. So if I pull that picture back up for a second, you'll see you've got the first road, the second road, and the third road from left to right. I think there might be 1 or 2 more just out of shot there, but that gives you an idea then of where you are parking your locomotive in the shed. What you'll also see there is the pit under number 6106, the locomotive in the middle, and this is known as an inspection pit. This was a facility that allowed engineers to get under the locomotives to service them, to oil them in parts that needed it, including some of the bearings, and also to carry out some light maintenance on them too. They'll generally descend a few feet under the loco so they can squeeze under there without too much of an issue, with steps down into them too. And you start to find those at some of the medium-sized to larger-sized depots that are out there. If you want one of those on your depot, Pico do provide ready-made inspection kits, as you can see here. These fully come with the pre-cut plastic channel with the detailing on the side. You get the rail to put in the side of them too, and the steps down into them. If you want to put those on, just bear in mind that you may need to cut a hole into your board just to sit them in, but otherwise they do look really effective once they're in there. The other thing you'll see from this particular image, and it's not something that really comes up to be slightly obvious, and Deck has already mentioned it there, is ash pits as well. So cleaning out the spent ash from the locomotives after they come off service. And you'll also see just on the floor of the shed that there is a general amount of oil and dirt and ash, with these being very messy locomotives to maintain, with a lot of messy different materials that you can handle there on steam locomotives. So a substantial part of building a steam shed isn't just the buildings, it isn't just the water tower, the double track engine shed, it is actually making sure it looks suitably grimy, as you would see throughout the heyday of the steam era. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. Various different suppliers, including Pico, do sell ash and cinders, which you can spread around the tracks in the appropriate places, mainly, as was pointed out before, near the ash pits where the ash was removed from the smoke box of the locomotives, but also generally around the depot itself, just near where the locos would be stabled or would be sitting for a long period of time, as we can see here. Alongside the edge of the tracks, we can also see a little bit of water and some oil there too. Spent oil again from the locomotives' axle boxes and similar places. And this can be represented by either the Pico or the Hatton's track bed weathering kits. Pico do a specific steam era version, which includes a lot of the ash and cinders appropriate for a steam era shed. And the oil spill kit is great for both you steam and diesel modelers if you wanted to add some of the oily patches where locomotives have been seen for a little while. So that's a great way then to build up some atmosphere in your shed, whether it is a smaller shed as we have here or one of these sprawling motive power depots that can be found there across the country. I would recommend taking a look at some of the images out there though when you are modeling your shed. The facilities can change based on the operator and the era and the location too. A lot of the stone-built engine sheds were found in the north of England where stone was more plentiful. Brick engine sheds were found at some of the more substantial depots out there where they could afford to build a long-lasting facility. On the smaller branch lines, you may find a similar, or simpler, shall I say, wooden construction, which wasn't really meant to last and was built on a budget, but at the same time, it provided the full facilities that you would need for such a small operation. So as I've done here, do have a look around at some of the images that are out there to really get some inspiration, whether you are looking at a small or large layout. One thing I've not included here today on my layout is a turntable. Now that will be provided at the larger depots and some of the larger stations too, with many locomotives working best with forward facing, especially the larger express locomotives. They weren't really designed to go backwards at the same speeds as they were forwards compared to the diesel locomotives that replaced them. So a turntable will be provided to turn the locomotive so that they were facing the right way for them to be driven on the front of the next train that they operated. We do have fully working turntables available in double O gauge from the Hornby range, and we have cosmetic turntables available in different sizes from the Pico range too. So do have a look at those. They are available, as is everything here today, right now to have a look at. So that is something there you can take a really good look at. I'll just pull out the inspection kit here so you can see how that goes together. This is a bit of a snap together kit. There's not really much glue provided. You do need to cut the sprues off there for them to join together, but you'll see it's got the slots on either end. And if I cut the sprues off there, you'll see that they slot and join, and then you feed the rails through the top, and then you can put that onto your layout underneath the track. As said, you may need to cut out a little bit of the board for that to work fully, but then you can add the inspection pit, which was found at a surprising number of depots, and also a very similar ash pit, as was mentioned previously in the chat too. So do take a look at what we have available. Adding an engine shed to your layout really can give you something to go to town on the detailing side. Although you can buy the pre-built buildings, as you see here, here, and here, you can also buy a lot of additional items in various different forms. We have the plastic kits available from Hornby, which are great for you modelers on a budget, and you can add a lot of detail to them too. You can look at the card kits from Metcalfe, and do check out our card kit building video on our channel for more information on how to get started on one of those. there's a really great variety of different buildings that you have available there. Enhancing the layout with a lot of the details you see here, such as the weathering kits to really recreate that grimy shed atmosphere that you would have found all over the UK for more than a century, as we can see here in Didcot Shed, which is recreated by the Great Western Preservation Society, I believe. But also some of the extra little items too. I've got here a steam depot detailing kit, which just includes a couple of oil barrels and small parts of locomotives, plus a couple of bits of weeds and shovels, etc. Just little bits that you would find around a depot in corners and maybe left there until the next needed, which might not be for a little while actually. So you can really start to create a nice scene. If you want to add a locomotive crew there too, you can add another small unit, as we saw on the Lock Tay engine shed just to the right there, a little staff hut for staff facilities for them to be able to get a cup of tea or prepare themselves before getting into service on the locomotive. So this is just one suggestion that I have here. As we've seen in the images today, there's lots of great opportunities, whether you want an engine shed large or small. But I hope I've shown you the main items that you need for an engine shed to include in your layout. Everything here is available right now on our website, as is a huge amount more information than I have got here for you right now. There's building guides for the kits. There's guides, full guides on how the inspection kits go together. There's also some indications on where they should sit on your layout. We do sell full bookazines and guides on building engine sheds and dioramas similar to this. But this really covers the basics. We've got the essentials we need to make sure our locomotives are ready for service on a small branch line style shed in front of me. And then we can look at adding further things onto that, such as the double track engine sheds to make a sprawling, busy depot for many, many locomotives, more of which you'd find along the main lines and in the busy towns and cities of the UK in the parts of the 20th century. So do check out everything we've got available right now. If you click that link in the description, I've put everything I have available right down there now for you. So do take a look at that. If you've got any more questions regarding building a shed for a steam era layout, if you're not quite sure what to put where, or whether you want to add a certain item and you're not sure it's quite right for you, do get in touch with our customer experience team, or put a note on the videos, put a comment on our Facebook or YouTube channels, and we'll be sure to help you out and give you some great guidance. But take a look at everything I've got here today. There's some real opportunities to build something quite fascinating and combine a lot of the skills from our Skillscast videos to make a really nice little diorama. Whether you're laying the track, putting down some of the oil spill kits, or building card kits, there are some of the demos out there for you too. So otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you're a diesel era modeler, don't forget to check out our Building a Shed diesel era or modern era video too, which will be available on our channel. And that will cover some of the same items, but a lot of the differences on how modern era sheds have changed compared to the steam locomotives that we have here. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great videos like this. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and keep an eye on the website for all the latest model railways news and Skillscast videos too. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.